Good morning. Again, my name is Patrick Kelly. I'm with Digital Watchdog, and we're glad to do another Works with DW Spectrum webinar. And this morning, we're going to be talking with Paul Eaton. Paul is with C2P. He's a technology partner of Digital Watchdogs in the latest version of DW Spectrum 4.0. And any version beyond 4.0 will contain the C2P framework. And so what you'll discover for those of you that have not seen the C2P solution, so what C2P gives us is the ability to incorporate about almost 40, but really it's open-ended in terms of the number of integrations that we can bring into the Spectrum interface. And so C2P really is, I call it like the unification platform, because it can bring in all these other solutions, and that's what Paul's going to share with us today. Paul, can you hear me all right? Are you out there?
I'm here.
All right. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you go ahead and show the group what we've got here.
Sounds good. Thank you, Patrick, for setting this up, and thank you everyone for joining. So again, I'm Paul Eaton, President and CTO of Convergence to Pixels, otherwise known as C2P. C2P provides a middleware product that we like to call the integration framework. This allows any IP-enabled device to seamlessly be integrated into the DW Spectrum platform. So we've been doing this for quite a while. Integration's all we do. Started in 2010. With the sole vision of developing a common integration framework that allows any IP device to seamlessly integrate into any VMS system. So to kind of give you a visual of what that looks like, DW Spectrum is the centerpiece, or the single pane of glass, as I guess the common term is nowadays, where all these verticals of different types of IP appliances can seamlessly send their data in and be immediately searchable and tied to the video of any text event. We're going to cover this slide quite a bit, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. We'll be coming back to it. So I'm going to briefly cover what's different about C2P here. Some of it may or may not make sense, but we're going to revisit this after the slideshow, or maybe after the demo, and then go over what actually happens here to make this work. So the C2P integration framework makes the DW Spectrum, that single pane of glass, the holy grail for monitoring all metadata events. This unified head-end architecture has many benefits. So all metadata is normalized at the edge. So that's mission critical for what C2P does. That's a philosophy we adopted early on, and it's paid off immensely in the product. We provided all that unified data into a unified database, and that allows the user to have a common set of tools to be able to navigate between any integration seamlessly without having to know the underlying technology whatsoever. It just provides you the ability to get to that text and to be able to get to the video of those events very quickly and easily with a very common platform. Users don't need to learn, they only need to learn one interface. It adds value to the customer's current and existing investments in technology. That's key. Users want to know that they're getting a platform that has legs, and if they want to add to certain appliances later on, they can get there. And I think you'll see with this platform, you can easily get there with anything that puts out text. We could integrate into DW Spectrum. Provides visual verification. That's so mission critical. I mean, that's why the video management system needs to be the head end, is the visual verification side of things. And so we'll get into that quite a bit. But if you're just looking at text, you got a long way to go to solve a problem. But if the video is tied to, if the text is tied to video, it's game, set, match. You could easily identify what's going on. So that's also mission critical. We annotate the metadata. A lot of times you're just getting metadata or maybe video that's popping up and you really don't know what you're looking at. We provide a mechanism where we could allow the user to create standard operating procedures. Kind of sounds like TSIM, but we're not. And it allows the user to put up standard operating procedures for specific events of interest. So whoever's monitoring could know exactly what to do at that moment. All metadata events are stored time synchronous with the DW recorded video. That's just mission critical. It's we try to be to the millisecond time synchronous. Just that important when you're talking about text. and then a powerful multi-level search engine. We call it our hyperlinks search engine, hypermedia search engine. And that's because any piece of text we receive is immediately hyperlinked to the video of that event. So it makes it really easy to search for a piece of text and then immediately get the video of that event. And then one more slide here. This gives you an overview of the architecture. So on the left-hand side, we have a number of verticals that we integrate with, and these are just examples. And on the right-hand side is the rest of the infrastructure, the common database, and certainly the DW Spectrum framework or platform. And specifically, we are hosted in the client, the DW Spectrum client. It's a standard DW Spectrum client, no changes made. We just come up as a web portal in this large 1+3 view. And then we have complete control over 3 of the cameras in this view, so that when the user selects a piece of text, that video event will come up. And so let me talk about this screen in a second. So if we talk about how it works, which is what we're talking about in this slide, let's pick on point of sale. So let's say there's a point of sale terminal here. And by the way, we don't supply any of these technologies ourselves. We interface to them. So we are the glue that allows those devices to be able to be hooked into the DW Spectrum platform. So no confusion there. We are just the integration between the DW and the point of sale device in this case. So whatever gyrations we have to go through to get the data from these IP devices, and they're all different. There's really very little in common many times. So we normalize whatever we have to go through. We normalize that data at this interface. So at this interface here, the data has been normalized to our format. So it doesn't really matter how it came in. We normalize it to our format, and then so in the case of point of sale, we would take that text and immediately write it to our common database. Again, it's mission critical to what we do. And then we also create a video stream of that text. So we take the text and we convert it to a video stream, and then that goes into DW Spectrum to be recorded, as well as made available for the client to be able to view in real time or pull up in forensic mode. So the key to that is now you have the text time synchronized with the video via the DW Spectrum recorders and so on. And you can quickly go and do a search within the search engine and be able to pull up that piece of text with the overview camera of that event or multiple overview cameras of that event. And you're immediately time synchronized with every camera in the system. So that's a brief overview. We'll touch on this slide again later for other reasons. But all right, so I want to go back to this slide and drill down a little bit on these verticals, right? There's a bunch of verticals here, and I just want to give an overview and kind of drive home the theme of DW Spectrum is that single pane of glass, that unified head end. The holy grail of being able to do integrations is to have a unified head end for monitoring. And I think you're going to find that you get that with the DW integration with C2P. So point of sale. All right, so point of sale comes up quite a bit. In this case, we're looking at a Verifone integration. There's a little explanation of what's going on here. So this is our search engine side on everything we do, the big screen, the 1+. So this is the 1 and the +3 of these screens. This is always going to be the search engine, and these are the screens that we control. So this is normally an overview screen of the incident of interest. This would be our text that we converted to a video stream. And this is an optional, another virtual camera that the user has control of, and they decide whether they want to use it or not. But we give them tools to annotate in real time. So when there's a refund or some other complicated thing that comes in, they could easily write a rule, and this screen will pop up and annotate that event for you. So if you've ever watched a security video, it gets boring pretty quick. If you ever watch text in a security video, it gets boring really quick. So a nice thing to have is if you're looking for a specific event, it's nice to have an annotation that pops up that draws your attention to it. But there's plenty of other uses for the procedure screen, but in this case, it's being used just to annotate this event. All right, so that's the players. In this mode, we're looking at receipt mode. You could in this case, we selected refund. It went out to the video recorder and brought the video up at that exact point in time. There are many other screens, a few other screens, I should say. You hit this hamburger and it brings you down to some different screens. So let's look at a different screen. this is probably our most common screen here. This is our search engine, and this is what it defaults to when it comes up. So in this screen, I'm showing a multi-layer search. Normally, it comes up with just the IP appliance that we're hooked to. In this case, it's StorePoint. And if you do a search, it gives you everything that we recorded for that device. In this case, though, they didn't want that. They wanted to look at a very specific activity. Maybe they're looking for sweetheart deals or something, where they said the item description, and by the way, StorePoint gives us like 60 fields that you can select from if you so choose to build your filter any way you like. But in this case, it was item description, contains, it could be does not contain, and so on, equal to, not equal to. So it's item description contains coffee, the terminal is equal to 2, and the actual price is 99 cents, or less than 99 cents. You can do less than, greater than, equal to, and so on. So you get a list of those events that satisfy that. You click on any one of them. In this case, we clicked on this one at 4:06:20. The detail of that event comes up. When you click on it, you get all the detail of that event, and there's a scroll bar, you get plenty. And then if you want to see that event in video, you click show, and it brings you right to the video of that event. So you can play it backwards, forward, export it as evidence. All the power of the DW Spectrum is at your disposal at that point. So that's how that comes together. And this is a unified head end you're going to see quite a bit of. So in the world of point of sale, this is one view, but it turns out that there's generally an interest on the point of sale side to have custom views. And we don't steer away from custom views. Our integration framework was kind of built for it. So if there's a business case, we're all in. So in this case, a user had multiple stores, and they wanted to be able to monitor the activity on individual terminals. This is pretty standard for loss prevention, auditing, and so on. The beauty of this, though, as composed to other solutions, is it's built into your VMS system. It's built into DW Spectrum. You don't have duplicate systems that you have to go back and forth between. You can use the same cameras, so on and so forth. So it's really powerful to have all that in the same machine as your video surveillance. So in this case, they wanted some metrics to be able to monitor not only these suspicious activity, it's just ripe with abuse, these type of things. And the user gets to specify what they consider suspicious that they want to monitor. So it brings up the amount of activity for that particular event by user. These colored boxes are something that the store manager would be filling in. So as they monitor each one of these to verify that it wasn't a theft, and maybe it was an operator error, or maybe it was just a valid transaction. But as they do that, these percentages go up, so that when the auditing people look at what the store managers are doing, they actually can see that they're using the tool, right? They don't just have it on their machine, but they're not using it. So they reconcile these things, and these percentages will jump up accordingly based on that. So if you were looking at this, it'd be pretty easy to see there's something fishy going on here with the beverage comps. And you would want to drill down on all these, but for this demo, let's just hit this one's pretty easy. So you've got 153 beverage comps, looks a little suspicious. So there's another piece of this dashboard you could also look at as a heads-up display, and it would show you the same information graphically. So in this case, this graphic here shows total exceptions. And if you look, this color here matches our beverage comp that we saw that looked a little fishy. And we could also go over here by operator and say, well, 102 sure has a lot of exceptions. So you don't have to get your hands dirty with looking at a lot of data to figure out there's something going on here for this particular event. And all of this text, all these graphics are hyperlinks. I can click on any one of these and they'll hyperlink to the detail of that event. So for instance, beverage comps are of interest. I would click on it. It would bring me to the detail of beverage comps. And I would be able to go in and analyze those beverage comps, each one individually. So those three boxes that were colored in the initial dashboard, those are what are filled in here. So with this integration, you can set a status. Once you've reviewed that specific event, and it looks really fishy, you could say that was a theft, it was a valid training issue, false key, blah, blah. But you select, in this case, they selected theft, and because it's that level, the store owner may say, you know what, I need this escalated so that the auditing people can review this, possibly for prosecution or whatever. So they would set this to true, and they could even add a comment. all these fields are searchable so that the auditing person could then go back in and say, just show me the SLA required events. I want to review those myself. And they could do that, bring up the video, play it backwards, forwards, and export the evidence and so on. So that's just an example. Go ahead.
Sorry, Paul. Just a quick question in terms of the slides that we've been looking at here. You're talking about point of sale information, and you've shown a couple. You showed Verifone and StorePoint, but really this would look the same whether it was a lock register or an IBM or an Expedient or Radiant or Micros, right? In terms of the functionality is the same across the dozen or so different point of sale solutions that you interface with, right?
Absolutely the same. There's no difference. We normalize it at the edge, so there'd be no difference. The only difference here, this was a custom for a particular client, so we could do a custom for any integration. There's different. Okay. Very common for point of sale to have their users, their auditing people are used to a certain look and feel, so it's very common for them to request a.
Are all the fields available? So, for instance, for a lock register connection, right? Are all the fields in lock available in C2P and subsequently into DW Spectrum?
Absolutely. Every field that the IP appliance puts out, whether it's facial or POS, we capture everything. We filter nothing, so it's all made available to us, and we try to we put the data we get in the category of the field in our database that it belongs. So when you're doing a search, you can look for just specific activity and be able to find it without having to search a blob of data.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
No problem. All right, so this is an example of a dashboard that can be built up. So if we get into facial recognition, I just want to point out in facial recognition, it's going to be the same look and feel. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this a few times because it's so important in this whole integration process. The big difference here, again, you can search, this happens to be Cyber Extruder or Aurora's 3D is their package. And it works exactly the same way. You could do parameter searches. You could just search for everything. The big difference here is I'm introducing the ability to bring up maps of this specific event. So if there's a GPS coordinates are provided by the IP appliance, we allow you then to bring up the map view of that event. So this is Google Maps. We put a pin on the map. And we even go a step further. We've done the math, and we can calculate from the GPS coordinates that we get from the IP appliance, we can calculate the camera GPS coordinates that we have from DW Spectrum, and we can automatically give you the cameras that are closest to that event. So you don't have to go running between different systems to try to coordinate that. It's all done automatically for you in the integration. So you could select the cameras, that'll give you the default view, or you could ask for, or you get a list of the 3 closest cameras. In this simulation, these are the 3 closest cameras, and you can click on any one of these and it'll bring you right to that camera view at that point in time. You can play it backwards, forward. You can see where this person came from, where they went, so on and so forth. So that's a powerful add-on for facial recognition. All right. So another thing we do is because we're so tightly coupled with the DW Spectrum integration, we have the use of the generic events. And so what we do is we built a tracking system around that. So our system is able to provide virtual camera views. That's what you're looking at. 3 of these are virtual cameras, and then 1 physical camera. So the first, this camera here is a JPEG that the user provided for that particular facility, and they plop down a camera where this location was, front lobby. So when this event happens, we know what map to bring up, we know what procedure to bring up, and it's saying it's the front entrance. So we're annotating why we're looking at this, right? This could pop on your screen, you wouldn't know what you're looking at it without these bottom 2 pieces. And so we annotate it with why you're looking at it. We show you the event, and then we give you any overview cameras. Because it's a generic event, you can have more than a 2x2 here. You can have more cameras than just the 4 I'm showing. But it's all enabled through the integration. So I'm going to click a couple times here, and we're going to see this person move through the building just to show you the tracking capability. How we trigger on tracking is this _T with Cyber Extruder. That tells us that they want to track this person if they ever show up in the building. So I'm going to click this, and you're going to see that person move from the front entrance to another facial recognition camera here. We show you that information. We annotate it. They're now at the northwest hallway. You get the overview of that hallway, and then you get the live event of the facial recognition. That person's going to move up to the northeast hallway, and we're going to map them there, and so on. So it just gives you the advantage of the generic event capability within DW Spectrum being put to work here. It's pretty powerful. All right, so license plate recognition works very similar to facial in that it comes from a camera, and we take it from there. So here you'd be in a license plate recognition event. It would give you a specific event or all events. You click on any one of them, you hit show, it brings you right to the detail of that event. So the key with this is with license plate recognition, you get a license plate and you get an overview of the rear of the car and some text, but it's not all you need. The very next question normally is, let's get a look at the video of that event. And without having it seamlessly integrated into the VMS. And by the way, we capture everything. So let's say this car was an alert category today, but yesterday they weren't. In a generic event situation where you can only define specific events, you wouldn't have that. With the integration from C2P, we capture everything. So we could see where that car was the last week, day, or month, and bring up the exact video of that. So you can have the entire history in the integration. So for the customer, if they have several cameras throughout their enterprise, they're adding considerable value to those cameras now, because you could utilize them and say, okay, if you went up to this next intersection, which way do you go, right or left? Who was in the car, and so on and so forth. So you can see where they came from and where they went, because you have the complete integration, not just a picture of a license plate in the rear of the car. And then here, I'm just going to show you quickly the same tracking thing. So this is a campus. The vehicle gets picked up at the entrance. They're going to leave over here, and these are the overview cameras. So it's the same general drill as the facial, but I just want to show you how simple it is to be able to hook up and take full utilization of the DW Spectrum.
So Paul, when you're talking about license plates or ANPR, right?
Yep.
Just to kind of point out, you're compatible with Neuralabs, PlateSmart, INEX. You have about 8 different LPR solutions currently at the moment. Vigilant is another one. So those are all compatible. They would all look the same as what you're showing in that single pane of glass. There's no difference once they're in the Spectrum with that information, right?
That's exactly true. And for the user, a lot of times what will happen is at a municipal type of deployment, they'll have multiple types of LPR systems. And so it's a real pain for them, because they don't care what the source was as far as who it was, LSAG or Vigilant. They just want the plate, and they need it now. And so by having a common database, they could quickly find the plate in the car, independent of worrying about what the resource was that gave it to them. So that's a big advantage for the users. Otherwise, they've got disparate systems. They got to go run over and look at a different terminal and try to figure out what's going on, depending upon which system captured it.
And there's all the time to learn those different systems versus inside of Spectrum.
Cool.
You have that unified interface. Right.
Yeah, that single pane of glass, it's so important. If you're serious about integrations, you've got to have that single pane of glass, because there's just too much. It's getting more and more popular to bring your integrations into DW, and you really need that single pane of glass. All right, so I'm just going to touch on access control. Are we set, Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so access control, I'm just going to touch on it. The only unique thing here that's different, you'll notice the same common look and feel, is now we have images. With access control, like license plates and facial, they give us images, a reference image for the badge holder. And so we put that in the live camera stream that we get. So you can do a visual verification either now, live, or in the future, based on some forensic work you may want to do. And other than that, it works exactly the same for the end user. Asset tracking, barcodes is one way of doing it. So again, you'll notice this common interface. In this case, we're looking for recalled goods. You come up with whatever reason you want to do a search, but in this case, it was recalled goods. You get a list. You can pick any one of those. You do a show, and it shows you what that package looks like now. And then you can play backwards and forward and look at it at different locations if it were damaged. You could play the video forward and backwards from this particular scan to see where it was put, what it looked like when it came here, so on and so forth. So it's all the same rules still apply. And also I should mention, we have virtual cameras for our simulator. So these are all virtual cameras. Even when I do a demo, you're going to see that it allows us to be able to simulate a lot of different environments without having to scan boxes or bring license plate readers around with us. All right, so tracking with barcodes. Another type of tracking we do is man-down events using body-worn active RFID technology. And it's very popular in prisons for guards. If there's any kind of situation going on, they're not comfortable, they hit a button, a number of buttons, and different events can happen. So prior to us, when they hit a button, all they got was the text. They got this kind of text. And they had to reconcile and try to figure out if it was worth sending a group out there to see what's going on, or they didn't have situational awareness. With our integration, as soon as the event happens, you get the overview camera based on the RFID reader closest to the event. We give you the text that we received for the event, and we give you your standard operating procedure of what to do. The user provides this. We don't do this. We just give them the tools to make their own, and it pops up when that event happens. So each one of these can be uniquely created for a specific event to let you know what to do in that specific situation. So RFID tracking is usually widespread when it's deployed in a prison, and so there's a lot of it around. So we were asked to do a customization to this and to be able to add another option they have for the RFID, which is door monitoring. So we did a custom for LPAS to be able to do that. So now the door monitoring is seamlessly integrated along with the man down, all in the same package. That's just a simple example of some of the customization we do. Weigh stations come in all shapes and sizes. You could have a Mack truck, or you could have a deli counter with meats that you think suspicious activity is going on, or you could have cannabis facilities where you're moving material through. The cannabis facilities love technology, so it's kind of nice to be able to tie whatever your product is to the visual of that product, and be able to search based on that, and maybe even have some standard operating procedures that go along with it. All right, now we're into GPS events. So GPS events is kind of let's call it a second generation for us. We normally like to anchor our integrations with a device, like a point of sale device or a barcode reader. With a gunshot, we're left with a sound in space. There's no anchor point, right? It's just the GPS coordinates were given by the shot detection system that's sending us data. So all we get is this here, longitude, latitude, and 3 rounds. So what we do, because we have that capability of doing the math and say, okay, this is longitude, latitude, what cameras do we have in that area? And we can bring them up immediately. So that's mission critical to the gunshot thing, because gunshot is kind of nice to know it went off. I think everybody knows that. They'd really like to zoom in on where and what was going on around it when that happened. So we'll touch on this again later. There's some more enhancements we do to that technology. So thermal cameras is another, works very much like gunshots. We just get longitude, latitude, and again, we do our math. We could bring up the associated cameras, the DW cameras that are deployed in that area, and be able to immediately bring up the first 3 that we find to be the closest to that. So you can see where that person came from, where they were going. Thermal cameras, sometimes they have confirmation cameras, so they could assign that to be the default camera to come up when there's an incident. We bring up the text that we get from that particular incident, and we also, the user provided a procedure here, or an annotation to define why you're looking at this. And again, facial recognition, we covered that. It shows a pin on the map on where that person was. You have the same options of looking at the surrounding cameras for that event, just based on the GPS coordinates. And then back to my favorite, multi-factor. So multi-factor is pretty cool. What happens with multi-factor is, because we're sitting on that common database of all the events, we are starting to get a lot of interest to do other things with that data. So as part of that, we also created a product we've been working on literally for years, on and off, just different attempts. But we call it our enrollment system. So what we do in the enrollment system is, in this case, we could do it with license plates, faces, RFIDs, whatever. It's whatever the device is. When they send us the unique ID for that device, in this case it's a license plate, we convert that to a WIGIN credential, a valid WIGIN credential, and we have a database of those. So when a plate comes in, we look in our database. If it exists, we take that credential, that WIGIN, valid WIGIN credential, and we submit it into the access control system. The access control system does what it's supposed to do. It's the head end for access control. It makes the decision whether or not that gate goes up or not. So we don't have systems sitting out at the edge that are not connected to the access control system. So if someone's let go or fired, it may take a while for that information to make it out to the edge without this type of technology. With this technology, it's tied to the access control system. That gate goes up and down based solely on the access control system. Because we have a two-way integration with the Access A1001, we also put that information up on the screen, so you could see that that car was granted access. It was Jane Doe, and this is the name of the gate that it went through. So it's really starting to get interesting once you start tying the data together from multiple different sources. And then license to plate recognition and POS. I think casinos, when I hear this, because they're always interested in where their patrons are, especially the high rollers. It comes into play, as well as the money they spend on marketing and sales. They'd like to know there's a return on that investment. So with us, they could get whether it was some custom software, whatever the requirements are, but they can get a history of what new vehicles have shown up since they start a specific marketing and sales campaign, and they could judge for themselves whether that is worthwhile for them, and so on, especially with states now being added to the license plate recognition system. So then we get banking and LPR. That's a common one. Anytime there's money involved, there's always something going on. So a common request is, can we get license plate data synchronized with the ATM events to kind of weed out some of these scams? And certainly the answer is yes, with the integration. So we could take whatever's happening at that ATM machine and correlate it to the plates that are associated with it and look for patterns and so on. And
so Paul, in your multi-factor, on that last slide that you were just on, your multi-factor to where you're bringing two technologies together in this case. So here you're showing the ATM working with some of your compatible license plate recognition solutions. So basically you're showing two, but really in a bank, you could also tie this with the DMP access control system, for instance. Is there a limit to the number of simultaneous integrations that C2P can handle?
Yeah, no, it's not really a problem at all, because it's sitting in a database for us. So we could just go data mine it any which way they like, depending on what type of reporting they're looking for.
So continuing along this particular slide, if you're in a financial institution and you've got DMP for access control, you've got teller line software, you've got license plate recognition software, you've got ATM, all of those can be brought into the C2P interface simultaneously, so that financial institution can have data from multiple sources all within that single pane of glass again, right?
Exactly. And even to leverage that a little bit, given the DW, I could have a bunch of different tabs. So I could have one for the teller workstations, I could have one for the ATM machine, and so on. So if I want to, zoom in on those individually, I can do that, or I can bring them together as one screen.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so that's the ATM. So this is one where it gets pretty interesting. So when you have a gunshot in space, and you're working with municipalities, so that's great. They figured out there's a gunshot, but the very next question is, what vehicles were in that area? It's not like it was anybody hit. It's like, were there any vehicles in that area? I guess there seems to be a correlation between vehicles and gunshots. So with this technology, we have the longitude, latitude of where they think the gunshot was, and we have the longitude, latitude of the LPR readers in that area. So we can quickly and easily get you to the plates that were in that area at that point in time. And I think they look for common plates when they're going after the license plates that are associated with gunshots. All right, so that pretty much covers the slide part. We could jump in at this point and do the demo part. So let me see
Paul.
if I have that. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again, just to kind of circle back on some of the things that you've been talking about. So for instance, for the RFID tracking, you mentioned LPass would be a compatible solution for the RFID. So the question out there, and then you've also talked about your ability to do custom integrations. So I know, for instance, an integration that is not in the base package of C2P or the base licensing model of C2P is Wonderware, for instance, which is also a commonly used solution in prisons. So really the question is, in the field, if someone were to go out and purchase our Blackjack C2P server with the C2P software loaded on it and deploy it in a detention facility like you described, and they integrated it with LPass to bring that information into Spectrum, 6 months down the road, after they saw how wonderful this solution worked, they could also deploy your Wonderware integration and have C2P work with Wonderware at the same time, right? So you can those custom developments can be added down the road, or the system can grow. Going back to the financial institutions, you can come in with the ATMs, but you can also add the teller line or add the LPR, just like you would add a camera, for instance, in Spectrum. You can add licenses to C2P to bring in the DMP access control once you've proof of concept the solution with the Diebold ATMs, for instance.
Sure.
Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Right,
yep.
So, yep. Sorry to interrupt. You're getting to the best part as far as the demo itself. I mean, you've shown a lot of screenshots, but by all means, continue with the demo.
Yeah, so on the line of Wonderware, so we do a lot of work with Sally ports, and they have a little call box thing that they work with on the Sally ports, and so that's a very popular interface for us to be able to take that Wonderware information and pop up the right videos that are associated with that specific call box. And the guards aren't allowed to have keyboards, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen there that we have a solution for. So yeah, that's certainly right in our wheelhouse. All right, so let's see if I can bring up my view here. So this is your standard client. No magic here. This is all just your standard client. And all I'm going to do is bring up our web page and our search engine, log in. And so we can go, let's say, to LSAG, any one of these. Now, normally a customer wouldn't have all these. I'll short circuit this question. So normally a customer wouldn't have all these integrations. These only show up if there's data in the database for that particular integration. So the reason you see all this chaos is because all these integrations are in here for this demo. So I just wanted to short circuit that. If I just had LSAG, for instance, there wouldn't even be a drop down. It would just show LSAG. All right, so LSAG, you have some default fields. You have some times that you could pick to have data. I may not have any from today, so I may have to use that right now. So we'll say, let's go back to the first of the month. Yep, so there's some vehicles there. So it's just that simple. These fields down the bottom are specified by the user. These are what are selected now currently. I could add fields, I could delete fields to the bottom spreadsheet if I like. If I see something here of interest, like say maybe this plate, I could click on it and it automatically builds the view in Spectrum of that specific incident. I could play the video forwards, backwards, and do all those good things we talked about in the slideshow. We could do a search. If a plate contains, let's say it contains a 7, and I could add another parameter. Let's say the state was Texas. Just show me those vehicles. That's the only ones I'm interested in. So I can click this, then there's my Texas. And because it's a simulator, there's a lot of the same vehicle there. I could show any one of them, and boom, you're right at the site you wanted to be at, and you can continue your investigation from there. So that's just how simple it works. We can go into a bunch of these. If there's any questions out there, I can zoom in on that one. We'll start at the top. So access control, you could easily zoom between these. So you really don't need to know anything about the underlying technology. Once you learn one integration, you've got them all. So it's just that simple. These again are JPEGs. All right. For our demos, we put up virtual cameras. We put a JPEG in there. That would normally be your overview of that person swiping the badge.
How about the lock register point of sale?
Sure.
Using a lock register.
Yep. So let's see. Lock. So these are some transactions in lock. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to clarify, just for everybody that's viewing this, what Paul's looking at here is a web page in DW Spectrum that's tied into the C2P database. So that web page interface in the center there is where he's doing all of his searching, and then the camera streams are coming from are shown over there on the right-hand side in terms of the interface. So, you know, as you see, and he's working through it, you know, works phenomenally well right now with 4.0, and then you know, later, a couple months down the road, a couple weeks down the road, whatever it is, we'll be releasing 4.1 with a major upgrade to that web page interface in the middle there. So it'll be more of a Chrome-based web interface in the middle, and so it's just going to work that much better. Sorry, just so everybody understands what the layout there is that they're looking at.
Absolutely, absolutely, good point. And what I'd like to emphasize is, so this is the time the event happened, right? And this is where we snap to when I hit show. So that's key. The database, the hypermedia search is linked directly to the video of that event when you hit show. So that's just one of the features and elements of that. So you could actually go through and pick any of these things you want to see on this little sense of humor in the simulator, and be able to do a search on any of these particular items you're looking for, and be able to bring up that specific text. All the search parameter things works exactly the same as we did with any of the other integrations. Basically, because we've normalized it in our database, it has to be that way. It's just, there's no way to decouple it at that point. They're all sharing the same resources. We can go to store points, and there's our different transactions. We could look at them in this view, or we can go over and say, let's take a look at them in the audit summary. And I think I have stuff here. So here's that heads up display showing the specific events. I can go into all voids, and it shows me just the all void events. I could you know, select any of these. Any of this stuff is all hyperlinked. We've hyperlinked here before. We can now go in and see what 102 is doing here. We could look at that price override if we were concerned about it, and see what's going on. We could add it, edit it. We could add a status. Let's say it's a theft. We want to escalate the issue to the auditing group, and I'll just say bad. And then once we do that, that now becomes part of the database. So this is now a searchable piece of the database. So if I wanted to link all my bad stuff together, I just give it a comment of bad, do a search, and it would show me just that commented list. Or I can look for just escalated, or I can look for just theft. So the loss prevention people would zoom in on the escalated required, and they'd want to reconcile those events first. They could play the video backwards, forward, come up with their own conclusions, and decide whether there's prosecution needed or whatever. So it's just that simple to use, and it's completely, fully integrated into DW Spectrum. So you have your loss prevention system integrated with your video management system. Is the way it should be. You don't want to have duplicate cameras and duplicate systems going back and forth between them. Alrighty, so that's that guy. Any other comments or things you want to see? Here's the enrollment connector. If I wanted to enroll, go ahead.
Sorry. A couple things, couple questions that have come up and kind of hit the Q&As as we're going through here. So the comment was that you need to point the source device of the integration towards the C2P server software, and really in terms of and this isn't a presentation or a training on the configuration, but really what it is that in the setup of C2P, you actually point C2P to go listen to those devices, right?
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways that happens. So sometimes we have to subscribe. We'll have to go log into that system and do a little dance with them to make sure we're allowed to see this stuff. And then we get copied on all transactions that happen from that point forward. Sometimes they send it to us, and sometimes it's a combination of both. It really depends on the type of integration, and it even varies with like POS. Some will send it to us like lock, and others like StorePoint, you got to go get it and subscribe and do some other things. But the nice thing is we normalize that traffic, so you're separated from all that, and all you see as the result is the data, which is all you care about.
Exactly. And then, sorry, one more question before you get into the LPR. One more. Currently, right now, this software is running on our Blackjack C2P servers. So we've preloaded C2P on a Blackjack server that you can run in parallel with a Spectrum server to take this data and bring it into Spectrum as part of that. I know your roadmap includes different locations for the C2P software. Would that be fair to say that you're looking eventually to move some of that towards the cloud, for instance?
Oh yeah. No, it's exactly true. Exactly true. Yeah, we're migrating the search engine side of the things to the cloud. It just comes up quite a bit. If you have multiple facilities, you'd like to be able to monitor them easily, and having a cloud-based version of the database makes that fairly simple. It's easy for us to push out updates and so on that way as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm just going to do one real quick thing here. We'll jump off of this. But so let's say I wanted to enroll this plate into my access control system. It's as simple as, and by the way, this was captured as we showed earlier, and it was put into this enrollment connector. I could very simply just say, send this to HR, hit send, and they would get a copy, just like in HR when you go to a hotel and they get a blank card out of their drawer and they scan it in to get the number off of it, and that becomes you. Well, that's exactly what happens here. As soon as I hit send, the credential for this license plate is now sent to HR, and they could assign that to any person at that facility. So that, and then based on that person, it decides whether or not that gate goes up, what permissions they have. So we're taking the license plate and we're giving it permissions based upon a person just by sending that up to HR that way. It's a standard way that they enroll folks at access controls using access control anyway. And then in this case, I happen to know this one's already enrolled. So if I send it to this gate, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear it on the video, on the audio, but let's give it a whirl. It'll actually unlock a latch. I don't know if that came through or not, but it was sent out and unlocked the latch. And that would happen in real time. As that plate was detected, that latch would go unlocked if the access control system decided that was the case. And the access control system is what I sent that to, and it decided that plate should unlock the gate. All righty. In the interest of time, I think unless there's any more questions, I want to go back and finish up the slide side.
Yeah, is there any limitation? I noticed the credentials are numbered there. Is there any limitation to the number of credentials you can put in there?
I think it's 16 million is the
Okay.
is the current, but we could even increase that. It depends on the version of Wigan you're using. So I think that's using Wigan 36 or 38, but Wigan has several versions, and we can work with any of them. The beauty of this integration is every access control system I'm aware of, and somebody could prove me wrong, but every access control system I'm aware of uses Wigan. So we don't have to do anything different to be integrated with a specific access control system. As long as they take Wigan, we're compatible. So that's kind of the beauty of all this, and why we spent so much time on making that happen. Alrighty. Yeah, so what I didn't show you, and I could have, that number, those numbers you saw were just a representation on the screen. The actual Wigan number is 38 bits of binary that gets sent. So
right.
It has nothing to do with that particular entry there.
Yep.
And it's all Wigan encoded as industry standard. And we're a credentialing authority, so we just create a Wigan credential on the fly for whatever appliance is sending us stuff, and then we use that to send into the access control system. And then in their world, they love it because it flies through their system the way, just like a card swipe. They could be a little resistant to change sometimes, and because this is so seamless, it works out well for them. And we also take, if they already have a database of license plates to credentials, Wigan credentials, we could import that in to our database, and we could start with that and then add to it as new vehicles show up. So that's big for folks that have a large deployment, like casinos with lots and lots of license plates already recorded.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is the slide we started with. It was kind of the mission, what we were trying to accomplish. So I'm going to go through and see how we did. So this is a single pane of glass, the unified head end. So all data normalized at the edge, resulting in common set of tools. So that goes back to this slide over and over again. It's the beauty of normalizing all these guys at the edge, so we have a common tool set we could work with. Users only need to learn one interface. I really hope I drilled that home. That's your unified head end right here. So whether you're doing access control or you're doing asset tracking, it's the same interface, no matter what you're doing. POS, it's always the same. Adds value to customers' existing and future investments. Again, back to this slide. So let's say a customer is doing POS today or facial today, and they want to add license plate or access control in the future. You want to be able to say, yes, you can do that. It's already baked into this integration. We can easily make that work for you. You're future-proofing their investment by going this path. We're not a one-trick pony that just does one of them. We've built a framework that can do any of them. Visual verification, it's just so key to have visual verification. Without video, solving these things just looking at text is a real challenge. And with video, it's game, set, match. All metadata stored. Again, this is on the metadata side. So having that metadata all in a centralized location, it opens up a lot of opportunities. And some customers will come to us with that we never even thought of. And we can do a custom interface for them and to make that happen because we're sitting on all that common data. So that's not a problem. And then the, let's see, then the multi-layer search engine, and that's fairly obvious, and it's available for every integration. So whatever fields we have available, we can make them available to you for your multi-layer search. And you can make it as complicated as you like. You get a list, you get the results. And then customization is available. Due to our common database, we're always asked for this. And so given the right business case, any of this stuff can happen. And we went through the value of having a heads-up display on this to be able to find out where those loss events are happening. It's surprising, and when people get this, they never realized how much money they were losing until they get the tool and see what was going on. So basically, if it's not on the menu, we can make it for you, right? It's just like a restaurant. Given the business case, we can make it for you. All righty, how are we doing on time? Pretty close.
Yeah, that's okay. We're all in quarantine anyway, so we're going to be here a while. So, any other questions out there? I've tried to interrupt you with questions. Sorry about that. As they've been coming in. Anybody out there with anything else that we have not gotten to? You talk about customizations. You talk about customizations, and so people can hit you. You had your email address on the first slide, but in terms of your website and contacting you with requirements, what should people, if somebody has let's say a particular register type that they're using for store, what should they have? So what information should they have ready for you to do those types of things?
Yes. Yep. So that's a great question. So let's say a point of sale register. So a lot of times they'll say, well, it's a micros. Okay, but micros has a lot, or an NCR. There's a lot of members of that family. So we need to know exactly what member it is. Is ISS 45? Is it store point? Whatever. And we also we need to know that they can put us in touch with the supplier of that particular technology. So it's NCR or whoever, so that we can get a spec. We need to get some kind of a spec, an API, whatever they provide to be able to get that data. And usually the IP device, they're used to that question. But if I ask for it, it's not as powerful as if the customer asks for it, and then they usually get the answer they're looking for.
I don't know if I've seen this, but do you have integration guides for, and I'm going to go back to point of sale for the lock registers and so forth. Do you have any kind of documentation or information about particular integrations, almost like an integration guide for those?
Yeah, no, I believe we have them for most. I could certainly check if they say the particular integration of interest. Just let us know, and we'll send what we got.
Okay, great.
Happy to do demos, set them up, and test drive it for themselves.
Question came up, and so I can kind of answer this one in terms of the list of integrations. So if you go to our website, and actually, Paul, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself the presenter.
Sure.
And just to kind of point out what we have available, right off the bat. I mean, as you said, you have a lot of, or you have the ability to do custom integrations, but in terms of integrations that we have at the ready, so on the DW website underneath the Blackjack section, you can actually just type in C2P, or it's listed with the Blackjack servers. We are producing these out of our facility in Cerritos, where we've taken kind of try to make it as easy as possible, as seamless as possible. So we've preloaded the C2P software on a Blackjack cube out in Cerritos, and we can ship these pre-configured and ready to go with the licenses ready. So you offer two types of licenses, the type 1 and the type 2. Essentially, the type 2 is for any access control solution, and everything else falls under type 1 as the base. And so in terms of those. So when you're ordering these, you just let us know whether it's an access control or type, or a type 1 or type 2 type of configuration. Question came up in terms of list of compatible solutions. So here you'll find licenses for the different access control solutions, so DMP, ISONAS, in terms of, you know, the list of compatible solutions, open options are out there. Video analytics solutions, so you talked about the SiteLogix, thermal cameras, the shot spotter, the detection. So again, on the Blackjack C2P page, there's a tab that says part numbers, and that kind of gets you your list right off the bat of different register types. So here would be your lock register, shore point, all the things that you talked about today are in here and ready to go. If you're doing license plate recognition and you want to use Neurolabs, great. Or you want to use PlateSmart, fabulous. Use them all and, you know, bring them into Spectrum that way. The ATMs, the Diebold ATMs, the LPass we talked about, the Way Station, all of this is at the ready and ready to go. You have your additional options as far as the auditing modules and so forth for that. But those are all there right now. And just to clarify, the C2P is running. It's a Windows-based software, right? So it's gonna run on a Windows machine, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah, okay. And there's no, at the moment, at least for the foreseeable future, there's probably no Linux option for that. It's just going to be in Windows.
Well, the database certainly can go on a Linux platform. It actually runs natively on Linux quite well. So that's fine. It's the front end where we normalize the database when we first pick up the data. That's all done in Windows.
Okay, great. So I don't see any other specific questions. If we didn't answer your question fully enough, by all means, contact either your digital watchdog regional representative. You can contact Paul or myself. We're available, and as Paul mentioned, we can always do follow-up specific webinars in a very similar format to this, but more specific to your particular application and any of the questions that were not covered. But thank you for joining us this afternoon, at least on the East Coast, or you know, this morning out there on the West Coast. But any questions come up, by all means, please let us know.